There is a good chance that the Louisville Cardinals will upset the Tennessee Volunteers on Saturday.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what is going on, everyone? Welcome in to this Friday edition of the Locked On Louisville Podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the university, third year hosting this show. And I want to express my gratitude on this Friday, first, for making us your first listen of the day, and secondly, for helping the Locked On Louisville YouTube page reach 3,000 subscribers. Definitely appreciate that. Now, guys, today's episode of the show brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. All you have to do, visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Louisville men's basketball team will host the 12th-ranked Tennessee Volunteers on Saturday, going to be one of the first tests of the season. And it is one that I think that the Cardinals will be up to the challenge for. I think that there is a good chance that Louisville will upset Tennessee on Saturday. We'll explain here shortly. We'll then transition over into the football side of things, where we'll answer whether or not the football team can win out the rest of the regular season. Not going to be easy, but there is a realistic pathway to getting to 9-3 for Jeff Brohm's squad. And then to conclude the show, we will dive into a weekly mailbag question. Look, it's better late than never. You have asked some questions, and I want the opportunity to be able to answer those questions for you. Starting out in the men's basketball realm, the Louisville Cardinals started the season off with a 48-point victory over the Morehead State Eagles on Monday. They will now partake in the first of many tests that the first couple of months will provide Pat Kelsey's team with this season. The 12th-ranked Tennessee Volunteers will come to the KFC Yum Center for a noon tip-off. It's expected to have a solid crowd, which is nice to hear. Definitely a breath of fresh air. One of the best crowds in the past couple of seasons. So excited to see what that looks like. I will be in attendance. Tennessee opened the season up with an 80-64 victory over Gardner-Webb earlier this week. And I find it very difficult and dangerous to try to draw conclusions from such a very small sample size. One game is too few. 5 games is too few. Once you get to 10 games, you start to have a reasonable sample size. So it's still to be determined as to how good this Tennessee team is. But like Louisville, Tennessee wasn't able to avoid a roster turnover. In this day and age of the transfer portal, roster turnovers are pretty frequent. Louisville had to replace all 13 scholarship players. Tennessee brought some players back, but they lost 4 of their top 6 scorers. It started with Dalton Pence, one of the best players in the country, the best player on Tennessee's team, leading scorer. He is with the Lakers now. Jonas Adu transferred to Arkansas. And then you lost 2 really solid long-term rotational pieces in Santiago Vescovi and Josiah Jordan-James, who are really good defensively. So Rick Barnes brought some players back. Most notably, you have reigning SEC Defensive Player of the Year, Zakai Ziegler, has played 3 years, a ton of minutes for the Volunteers. He will be the floor general for this team. You have Jemai Mashak, who was a rotational player for the first couple of seasons and had a good season opener against Gardner-Webb. He projects to take the next step forward. You have Jordan Gainey, who, once again, another player who last season didn't necessarily have the greatest year after transferring in from UC Upstate, spent 2 seasons there, but had 16 points in the opener against Gardner-Webb. So we'll see if he's going to be a solid player off the bench. Now, it's worth noting that Tennessee will need to, at least for the short term, replace the production that Hofstra transfer Darlin Stone Dubar was, predicted to have for this team. The almost 18 points per game scorer last year, 6'8" wing, who's a really good three-point shooter, good defender. It was announced by Rick Barnes that he stepped away from the program for personal reasons. He's with the team every day, but he's just not playing. There's no timetable for his return. Regardless, we hope that he's okay. and whatever he's dealing with, we hope it gets resolved, and we hope to see him on the court for the Volunteers sooner rather than later. But as it relates to his status for this game against Louisville, you could probably infer that he's not going to play, but I guess we don't know that yet, but we're going to plan as if we're not going to see him. So Tennessee won't be up to full strength. They do have some returning pieces in the front court. Felix Okpara, he's not a returning piece, but he is incoming transfer, 2 years Ohio State. Really good interior threat, not necessarily known as a prolific scorer, but really good around the basket in terms of rebounding. And he started, over 40 games in his career at the power forward level. So that is nice for the Volunteers. You have Igor Milicic Jr., who is going to be asked to step up and make a big impact this season. He had 8 and 4 in the season opener against Gardner-Webb. Spent a year at Virginia, 2 seasons at Charlotte, and now he is at Tennessee. So we'll see. It's going to take some time for this Tennessee team to mesh, sort of like it will for the Louisville Cardinals. So the main question for the Volunteers is how are they, number one, going to be able to mesh when losing 4 of the top 6 scorers? And one of the main questions that I have, I'm not really worried so much about the scoring. One person that we forgot to mention is North Florida transfer Chaz Lanier, who was one of the most highly coveted guards in the portal, chose between Tennessee and Kentucky, decided to go back to his home state of Tennessee. I believe he's from Nashville. He's the guy that first 3 years at North Florida was a rotational piece, and then senior year, his stock blew up. He averaged almost 20 points per game. Really good three-point shooter. There's been some questions over his shot mechanics, but look, he is a big-time shot maker, and he's going to be a big-time scorer for the Tennessee Volunteers. But the main question that I have for Tennessee is, outside of Zakai Ziegler, who's going to initiate offense for this team? And that's the main thing that I worry about. And also, looking at Zakai Ziegler, the 5'9" native of Long Island, New York, he's always been, he's never been the primary scorer for Tennessee. That's been Dalton Connect. That's, been other players throughout, his career. Now he's going to be relied upon to be one of the top scorers. Now, main thing you focus on is when will Tennessee, if they get Dubar back, because he will alleviate some of those scoring concerns. Lanier will probably be the leading scorer. You have Jordan Gainey, Jemai Meshack. It's going to be a balanced approach for the Volunteers. But Ziegler, who has been a really good floor general, really good defensive player, his assist numbers have gotten better each and every season. He's at 9 assists this year through 1 game. Outside of that, who's going to step up and initiate offense? Because Lanier, as good of a scorer as he is, has never averaged over 2 assists per game. Like, he was brought in to be, a scoring option and be the go-to scorer. Meshack, really good defender, but same thing, under 2 assists per game in his college career. Jordan Gainey, the 6'3" senior from Tucson, he's been a little bit better of a passer, but at Tennessee, maybe not all that really. They have some freshmen, players that are coming into the program, some other guys who have been able to step up. But overall, I'm interested to see, is Tennessee going to be able to create offense for themselves? Now, if you can defend the three-point line, you're going to have a good chance at, keeping this Tennessee team from reaching their full potential. They are versatile defending. They shoot the 3-ball well, but the main thing you have to focus on for them is you have to limit those good looks. And I think that Louisville, with their ability to score points, with their ability to shoot the 3-ball, I think they're going to have an opportunity to really put this Tennessee team to the test. This is going to be the first test for Tennessee this year on the road. The toughest environment they will obviously have played. The first game was at home for them. So early season game on the road, which can turn into a raucous environment for a team that you're still trying to figure things out for. And also, how deep is this Tennessee bench? The roster-wise scholarship players, not, full capacity. And then now with Darlin Stone Dubar, having, not played for the team and likely not playing against Louisville, you're down another player. So yes, you have Lanier and Ziegler and Jordan Gainey. Can Meshack continue to take that next step forward? What about the front court? You have Milicic and Okpara, who both can rebound, but what about scoring down low? There's going to be a lot of pressure put on the guard play, and you have a Louisville backcourt led by Chucky Hepburn, who's a really good defender from the Big Ten. You have Corin Johnson. You've got some really versatile big men with Kaysen Pryor, Noah Waterman. James Scott can run the floor, and then you have Rain Smith. Louisville's going to try to test this Tennessee team by trying to exhaust them. Now, maybe that might hurt a little bit for the Cardinals because they don't have that cohesion when you substitute so often, but they're going to try to run the floor. They're going to try to exhaust this Tennessee team that by the end of the game, if it's a close game, they're going to try to put themselves forward. So personally, I think Louisville does win this game. I think that there's a good chance that they pull off the upset. Would it surprise me if they lost? No. Tennessee's a really good team. Rick Barnes is a good coach. I just feel like if Louisville is going to upset Tennessee, they have a really good opportunity to do so early on in the season at home. The vibes are good. And I think that the rotation matches up well with this Volunteers team. So obviously we'll break down the result, whatever happens on Sunday. But until then, the hope and the thought is that there is a realistic good chance that Louisville pulls off this upset against Tennessee. Speaking of realistic pathways, I think that there's a realistic pathway for the Louisville football team to run the table for the remainder of the regular season, win out and get to 9-3. It's not going to be easy, but I said it is realistic. We'll break it down coming up on the next segment, coming here at Locked On Louisville. Cardinal fans, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching. I wasn't actively searching, but found the perfect role for me on LinkedIn, applied, set up an interview, and now I am with that company. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Cardinal fans, want to take this time again to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. On into the the football side of things. We just talked about the men's basketball side. The football side of things, Louisville's 6-3. They have a bye week this week before playing the final 3 games on the schedule. 4-2 in conference play. The vibes are high after beating Boston College in a big effort to come back in that game. And then at Clemson, first win against Clemson in program history. It sort of changed the perception of this team because we saw what this team finally can be. So the question now is, can Louisville, who is seemingly all in on turning the season around, do just that? Can they win out the rest of the regular season, and can they run the table? Well, it's not going to be easy. You do have Pittsburgh. You have at Kentucky. Stanford's an interesting situation. It starts out with Stanford. You wonder, what version of Louisville are you going to get? Like when you get off a bye, are you still going to be riding that emotional high of the Clemson game and have a situation where, like Pittsburgh last year, you kind of drop the ball and lose to a team you shouldn't have? Because Louisville's going to be favored in this game by a good amount, as they should be. They're back in the rankings, number 25. Stanford has not been good. They're 2-7 on the season. They won 1 game in the ACC, and they are currently on a 6-game losing streak. They will also be coming off of a bye. So by all intents and purposes, Louisville should win this game, assuming that they come out and don't, play down to their level of competition. And then you look at the other 2 games, Pittsburgh and Kentucky. There's a good chance Louisville might be favored in both of those. Wouldn't surprise me, whatever. I think Pittsburgh is going to be the tougher game on the field, and Kentucky is going to be the tougher mental game. Pittsburgh is a good team. Now, granted, I think that, they have played a rather lackluster schedule, and it doesn't surprise me that their first legitimate test, they end up losing by a considerable amount. I predicted it on the Locked On ACC Squad episode, and we talked about that on the episode that aired yesterday. But it's still a good team. Pat Narduzzi's offense is really good, one that I think is going to give Louisville some fits. The defense is respectable. They're 7-1 for a reason. So they will play Virginia tomorrow on Saturday at home, and I'm interested to see how that goes, because that will also sort of paint the picture as to how good this Pittsburgh team is going to be. But again, it's going to be a challenging game. I do think that Louisville has the team to be able to pull this off. Their offense is going to be able to score points. I think defensively, if you replicate what you were able to do against Clemson, look, that's the main thing people will focus on. It's like, yeah, okay, we saw who the team can be. Who the team can be and who the team is on any given Saturday are two completely different entities, two completely different situations. Will we see the Louisville team that lost to SMU, that struggled in the first half against Boston College, that struggled against Virginia? Or are we going to see the Louisville team that played well against Clemson? To be determined. And I think that this Pittsburgh offense is going to be a challenge. I think that Louisville will have a really good shot at winning this. It's senior day for the Cardinals. I hope they haven't announced it yet, but I kind of hope that, well, actually, no, they haven't announced it yet. Sorry about that. It's still to be determined. If both teams are still ranked, it could be the ACC, was it the ACC huddle game or whatever it's called? ACC kickoff. I'm not sure what it is. But it could be flexed to a night game. So who knows? We're still in wait and see approach. So that's something to focus on. But it's going to be the toughest test on the field for the Cardinals. I do think Pittsburgh is better than Kentucky. And you're playing that game at home. So Louisville has the advantages in that particular game. Now you look at the Kentucky game. And I know that there's going to be people underneath of this video in the comments saying Kentucky is on a skid. They aren't going to make a bowl game. They have been terrible over the past couple of weeks. They're on a 4-game losing streak. They'll beat Murray State, and then they'll be coming off of a big loss at Texas heading into that final game. It's projected that they are going to be 4-7. They're not going to make a bowl game. And that may be true. And I do think Louisville's the better team. They should win this game. It's on the road. I think Kentucky's style of play is something that Louisville doesn't really do well with. I know Brock Vandagriff is potentially out against Murray State. I'm not really sure. Don't pay too much attention to the injury news for Kentucky. But he is a little bit banged up. So, are you going to see Brock Vandagriff in that game? Or is it going to be Gavin Wimsatt? Is it going to be Cutter Boley? Who knows? But Kentucky's a team that likes to, just absolutely take the air out of the football and have long drives, keep your offense off the field. Their defense has a really good defensive line. They've given up some points as of late, but still, this is a team with a good amount of athletes. And we're forgetting the main thing here is that no matter how bad Kentucky is, every single time this game is played, Mark Stoops has his team ready to play. We talked about that Clemson game. One of the main reasons why it was so tough is because it's a mental game. Louisville has never beaten Clemson. It's sort of the same with Kentucky. It's a mental game. This is a game that Kentucky gets up for. Now, Louisville was probably the better team last year, but Kentucky won it because they made the big plays. They won the turnover battle. They made plays on special teams. Who's to say that that won't happen this year? Kentucky is skidding, but Kentucky was skidding last year. So this is a huge mental hurdle that Louisville just needs to get over. They haven't been able to do that since 2017. They've lost every single game since 2017 against Kentucky. So on paper, if this game was played on paper, Louisville wins it. But it's not. Emotions factor into this. No matter how bad Kentucky's playing, they always get up for this game, and credit that to Mark Stoops. And I do believe that Jeff Brohm will have his guys ready for this game. But they'll have to, overcome this mental obstacle. Can Louisville run the table and win out the rest of the regular season? I think it's very realistic. It's not going to be easy. Don't get that twisted. But I think Louisville is probably favored in their final 3 games. as they should be. Very good chance they go 3-0. And I think that honestly, you look at the situation, and I think they need to go 3-0. They need to turn things around. They need to get to 9-3. Yes, the playoffs are probably not probable or possible, honestly. Probably not possible. You're not going to get to the ACC championship game. Right now, you're just playing for pride. You're playing for the end of the season. You're playing to continue to create momentum going into the off season, because going 10-2 and then going 9-3 is pretty good, especially with the schedule that the Cardinals had. So Louisville is on a bye. We'll break down the Stanford matchup coming up here in the next week. I do want to give you a little bit of a heads up. I will be out of town from Sunday night to Thursday evening. So there will be some planned episodes on Sunday and throughout the week. There will be another episode on Friday. So it's unfortunate, but it is a work trip, so pretty mandatory. So there will be a little bit of a change in scheduling, but there will be some episodes next week. To conclude the show, you all have asked some great questions. And one of the main questions is, who is the best player on this Louisville men's basketball team? Well, it depends on how you look at it. We'll break it down coming up on the next segment of Locked On Louisville. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5 APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available only for $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. And before we get back to the show, I do want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel, the title sponsor on the show and America's #1 sports. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. If you go to FanDuel right now, you'll be able to see the college football and NFL parlays as we head into this weekend's games, all at FanDuel.com. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's just a reminder, FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. You asked some questions. I'm going to try to answer those questions. The first question is the one that we teased before we went to break. That is, who do I think the best player on this Louisville men's basketball team is? And it really just depends on your definition of best player. Because, you could talk about, well, who's going to be the top scorer, who is the most valuable player, who makes an impact on both ends of the court. I'm going to go with the best player being Kaysen Pryor. Kaysen Pryor was my choice to begin the season, and he will remain. He had a really good game, 18 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and a block against the Morehead State Eagles. Shot 50% from the field, and Louisville was significantly better in analytics on offense and defense when Pryor was on the court versus when he was not. I think he's going to be a player that the analytics department loves, because I think that his value and impact spans beyond the box score. But I do think that he is going to be perhaps Louisville's leading scorer, and I think he's Louisville's best player. That is something that is subjective, but I do think that Kaysen Pryor is my vote to be the Cardinals' best player. I want to hear who you all think Louisville's best player is going to be. Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Next question. With how Louisville won the game against Morehead State, do you have any more bad thoughts than you had? Do you have any more bad thoughts than you had on Kenny Payne? So the way that question was phrased, it kind of didn't make a ton of sense, but I understand. It's basically saying, like, do you feel worse about Kenny Payne? Are you more upset with Kenny Payne after watching what Louisville did against Morehead State? I mean, I wasn't I appreciate Kenny Payne, the player, but these past 2 years, there's really nothing that I'm appreciative of. I think that he has yet to apologize to this fan base that, he basically made believe that, like, he even said, he's like, I want to see who jumps on the Titanic. What a weird reference that was. But no, I mean, I truly, I'm looking to turn the page here. Like, it's hard to do that when you have 2 years of flat out incompetence, in terms of coaching. And then immediately after, you have a 48-point win, a game the past couple of years that you probably possibly lose. I mean, it did make me kind of laugh because it just reconfirmed to those that wanted a year 3 that a change was needed. I'm still appalled to this day at those that, basically gaslighted the rest of the fan base into believing or trying to believe that Kenny Payne needed a 3rd year. Like, it was wild to me. We didn't forget. I still have the receipts, and I know a lot of you all do as well, but it is what it is. I'm ready to turn the page as well and unify as a fan base. So to answer the main question, I mean, it just made me kind of laugh. I don't know. I'm not really mad at Kenny Payne anymore because that's something that you can tell that he doesn't care because he didn't even issue an apology. And he went right back to John Calipari, but that's neither here nor there. Moving on. Let's see. We'll go to this question here. Which game do you feel like remaining on the schedule is a loss for the Louisville football team if they had one? So which game is projected, or which game, if Louisville was the lose game, which one do you think it is? I think it's Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's better than Kentucky. I think they have a really good offense. Eli Holstein throws the ball really well. They have a respectable defense. And it'll be interesting to see, which Louisville team arises in that game. But I'm going to say Pittsburgh. I think Louisville wins all 3, but Pittsburgh probably a better chance than Kentucky. Predict the first loss for the men's basketball team. Interesting. For the record, I predicted an upset over Tennessee. I think that they beat Bellarmine. I think they beat Winthrop. I think their first loss comes down in the battle for Atlantis. I think that I'm going to go out on a limb and say that they beat Indiana. Indiana just doesn't really impress me, especially, Mike Woodson isn't the greatest coach in my opinion, and I think that Louisville beats Indiana. I think they lose the next game because I project that Gonzaga is going to beat West Virginia, and Gonzaga is a really good team. They can give Louisville some fits, and I think that the first loss comes in the battle for Atlantis against Gonzaga. That is my ultimate prediction. And then the final question on this mailbag. Do you think Louisville goes with another transfer portal quarterback after Tyler Shuck leaves this offseason? I do. Because it feels like at this point, whether it's Deuce Adams, Brady Allen, Pierce Clarkson, none have really got any opportunities. Even when Pierce Clarkson played early on the season, didn't look the greatest. It's really hard to tell at this point, but all signs I feel like point to Louisville going after another transfer portal quarterback. So that is going to wrap up this Friday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Sunday. Go Cards, and hopefully we're talking about a Louisville win over Tennessee when we come back.